Let me tell you a story that still gives me chills. And it didn't come from some horror podcast or Reddit thread. This came straight from my cousin Nate, a no-nonsense Coast Guard veteran with over 10 years in the field. He's not into ghost stories, not the superstitious type. He's the kind of guy who follows protocol and believes in facts, not fiction. So when he told me what happened at Madness Rock, I paid attention. It was back in 2017. Nate was sent on a 2-week maintenance rotation to one of the most isolated places off the coast of Maine, a jagged little island with nothing on it but a lighthouse and one auxiliary shed. The place was called Madness Rock. There's no grid power, no plumbing, no real cell signal, just wind, waves, and silence. The only way in or out is by boat or chopper. Normally, it's a solo duty. But due to some unexplained electrical failures from the previous year, they sent 2 men this time, Nate and a guy named Russell. The first few days were quiet. Routine. They ran system checks, scrubbed salt corrosion off metal, filled the diesel tanks, and tested the emergency beacons. At night they played cards, read paperbacks, and tried not to get too bored. Isolation was expected. What came next wasn't. On the 4th night, Nate woke up just after 2 a.m. Something felt wrong. Not sick, not scared, just wrong. Like the air itself had weight. Like a thunderstorm was about to break, except the sky was clear and dead still. And then he noticed, the sweeping light of the beacon had stopped. That was serious. The beacon isn't supposed to fail, not during maintenance. Nate woke Russell and the two climbed the spiral stairs to investigate. When they reached the top, they found something jammed in the gear assembly. A soaked piece of dark fabric, thick and slimy like seaweed-covered canvas. It reeked of mildew and decay. The door had been locked. The windows sealed. No animals. No wind. No possible way that thing got in on its own. They chalked it up to a weird anomaly. Tossed the cloth out into the ocean wind and went back to sleep. But the next night, the exact same thing happened again. Another jam. This time, it was a red scarf, frayed at the ends, soaked, and crawling with tiny crustaceans. Like it had just washed up from the bottom of the sea. That's when the fear crept in. They started barricading the stairwell. Locked every door. Checked every bolt and hinge. But by the 7th night, something happened that Nate refuses to explain even now. He heard Russell whispering. Not to him, to the corner of the room. When Nate sat up and asked what he was saying, Russell just blinked, confused. Said he hadn't been talking. But later that night, Nate found him sitting by the window, staring down at the jagged rocks below. Russell said he saw someone standing there the night before. In the farthest edge of the beacon's light. Watching them. And then gone. After that, Russell unraveled fast. He barely slept. Barely spoke. He just stared at the ocean and mumbled about voices in the walls. On the 9th night they both heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps coming down the spiral stairs. Nate saw Russell already standing at the bottom, staring upward. Either of them had gone up. The door was locked. Yet someone, had walked down from the top. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. They barricaded their room that night, shoved a dresser against the door, and slept with knives under their pillows. On the 11th night, the beacon failed again. But this time, when they climbed the stairs, the door to the beacon room was wide open, swung out so violently it looked like it had been kicked in. The light had been deliberately tampered with. The massive industrial bulb, the kind you can't just unscrew without tools, was placed upright in the center of the room. And as they stood there, frozen, Nate felt something cold brush against his back. He spun around. Nothing. But Russell had gone pale, trembling, pointing at the wall. He said he saw a hand coming out of the bricks. That was it. They ran. Locked themselves in the bedroom. Russell sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, whispering to someone who wasn't there. Nate didn't sleep a second. The next morning, Nate used the emergency sat phone. Told HQ there was a serious mechanical failure and requested an early pickup. But here's the part that still haunts him. When the boat crew arrived, they asked about the distress call they'd received at 2:12 a.m. that morning. Nate never made that call. He hadn't touched the radio until dawn. The crew said the call came through garbled, static, and then a whispering voice saying, "There's someone here with us." Then silence. Russell didn't speak a word on the boat ride back. A few months later, he quit the Coast Guard completely. Never spoke of Madness Rock again. Nate still does maintenance duty, but he swears he will never go back there. Ever. This happened during the lockdowns, right around the time when everyone was stir-crazy from being stuck inside for weeks on end. No bars, no restaurants, no distractions, just the glow of your phone and the same four walls. I was single at the time, endlessly swiping on Tinder out of boredom more than hope, and passing time to meeting people while Netflix droned in the background. That's how I ended up reconnecting with this girl, Sophia. She goes by Soph. We'd followed each other on Instagram for a while, and she lived just 5 minutes away in Suffolk County, Long Island. One night, we both admitted how bored we were and decided to hang out. It was a Tuesday. I picked her up and we drove to a nearby park that was officially closed. We hopped a fence and sat under the stars drinking White Claws. Right away I could tell she was one of those fearless types, cool, a little rebellious, very much about the moment. She said, "Wanna do something more fun?" And before I could ask what she meant, she suggested we drive out to Montauk and walk the cliffs behind the lighthouse. I'd never been there before, but the way she said it made it sound casual, like a thing she did often. I was down. We finished our drinks, threw the cans, and hit the road east. The lot was empty when we got there. She told me to park right in the Lighthouse parking lot, said security wouldn't be around on a random off-season Tuesday during lockdown. I hesitated for a second, but her confidence made it feel safe. We had one more drink in the car, then started the walk. Seeing the lighthouse up close at night, it's beautiful, but it messes with you a little. Something about it feels liminal, like you're not supposed to be there. Soph led the way around the side, off the usual path, toward the cliffs behind the building. It was pitch black except for the main light overhead, and whatever our phone flashlights could catch. The rocks under our feet made a sort of natural trail they call the cliff walk. We were maybe 15 minutes in, walking slowly, when I heard her say my name quietly. I turned, and she was shining her light behind us. That's when we both saw him, some guy standing alone on the rocks, not far off. He was wearing a hooded coat, standing totally still. We couldn't make out his face clearly, but he looked like he might have been a black guy, mid-build, silent. I called out, asking if he worked there. No response. Just blank stillness. Then he spoke. "Y'all want to buy some coke?" My heart dropped. It wasn't relief, it was worse. He wasn't security. He was just there. Some random guy in the dark offering drugs in the middle of nowhere. I said, "Nah man, we're good," and told Soph to keep moving. She walked ahead and I followed, glancing back every few seconds. The guy didn't say anything else. But he started walking too. Not fast. Just pacing us. Matching our steps. Always the same distance behind. Every time I looked back, there he was. Always the same. Always silent. We reached the end of the cliff walk and started cutting through the grass back toward the lot. And that's when we noticed two more guys, coming from behind the lighthouse. One of them shouted something, but I couldn't make it out. I didn't respond. I told Soph not to either. We just kept walking, fast, not running, trying not to trigger anything. We made it to the car. I unlocked it, and we both jumped in, and screamed. They were right there. One of them tried pulling on the passenger door. Another hit the rear window. I locked everything in time, shoved the car in reverse and backed out fast, the only direction I could move without hitting one of them. They didn't follow once we were moving, but they hit the car, hard. Kicked it, slammed a fist. One guy even tried yanking the handle again as we rolled. We didn't stop. We didn't talk. Not until we were halfway home and the adrenaline finally started to wear off. We never reported it. We never went back. Soph and I kept hanging out after that, and we still talk here and there. But that night? It still sits with me. Too close. Too quiet. Too perfect a place for something terrible to happen. I'm never going back to Montauk Point after dark. Not ever again. This is a story my old friend Ian told me more than once over the years. Every time, it came out the same. No embellishment. No drama. Just a quiet kind of certainty that made it all the more unsettling. I asked him not long ago to write it down, just so I had it exactly as he remembered. He agreed, and told me I could share it. So I'm doing that now, because it's been stuck in my head ever since I first heard it. Ian was the kind of guy you meet once and don't forget. Early 50s, built like a dockworker, with sunbaked skin and calloused hands from decades of working near salt water. He was one of those men who seemed born to do hard things. Marine salvage, coastal repair, old pier restorations. If it was broken and close to the water, Ian could fix it. And not just as some hammer-swinging contractor. He'd been a diver, a ship tech, even did remote inspections for the government. Guy had stories. Real ones. So when he told me about the lighthouse job, I didn't question it. I just listened. He said it happened back in 2013. A small county up in Washington state had inherited a decommissioned lighthouse, one of those properties that got lost in bureaucracy. Developers wanted to demolish it. Historians wanted to restore it. But no one wanted to pay for either. So the county sent someone to assess whether the structure was even worth saving. That someone was Ian. The job was simple. Boat in, stay 4 days, evaluate the interior and exterior, then call for pickup. No big crew. No backup. Just him, a sleeping bag, tools, a clipboard, and a two-way marine radio. He packed light and didn't think twice. He'd done stuff like this plenty of times before. The island itself wasn't much, more like a jagged rock shelf than land. Maybe 300 feet wide. A single lighthouse. An old generator shed. A rusted scaffold leaning off one edge like it had given up years ago. No docks, no pier, no marker buoys. Just a stone ledge where the Coast Guard could drop you off at high tide and say good luck. When Ian arrived, the place was dead quiet. Cloudy. Cold. Still. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. No birds. No insects. Even the ocean seemed muted, like it was holding its breath. He did his initial walkthrough, ground level, stairs, second floor, and up to the beacon room. Classic spiral design, built in the early 1900s. The top lens hadn't worked in decades, but the tower itself was still solid. Lower floorboards warped but walkable. Storage room on 2. Cracked glass in the windows. The third floor had an old sleeping berth, but Ian preferred the ground floor near the generator room where it was warmer and out of the wind. The first night passed in silence. Too much silence, he said. The kind that feels unnatural after a lifetime of noise. The fog rolled in the next morning. Thick. He said it was like staring at a wall, no depth, no distance, just white. Visibility dropped to maybe 5 feet. But that wasn't uncommon out there. He kept working. Started detailing the stairs to the beacon room when he noticed something. There was a maintenance closet halfway up the spiral. On day 1, it was rusted shut. He tried opening it, but the hinges didn't budge. But now the door was cracked open an inch. Just enough to know it had been moved. He assumed the humidity had shifted the frame. Still, something about it didn't sit right. He pushed the door open and spotted a box. Wooden. Maybe the size of a lunchbox. Covered in damp moss, like it had been underwater not long ago. He didn't touch it. Just made a note and moved on. That night, something woke him. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one. As if the world had paused. Then he heard it, footsteps on the metal stairs above him. Not rushing. Not creeping. Just slow, deliberate steps climbing upward. Not down. Up. Which didn't make sense. He turned on his flashlight and waited. Nothing came. Nothing moved. Eventually, the sound stopped. He searched everything again the next morning. Top to bottom. Even climbed out onto the roof. Found nothing. No raccoons. No birds. No signs of anyone, except the box. It had moved. Now it was sitting outside the closet, in the stairwell, like it had been placed there. Still mossy. Still damp. Still nailed shut. He stared at it for a long time, trying to decide whether to pick it up. Eventually he did. It was heavier than it looked. Waterlogged, swollen, but sealed tight. He didn't pry it open. Just set it at the base of the stairs and stepped outside for air. That's when he saw them. Footprints. Bare feet. Not boot prints. Not shoes. Bare, wet feet in the dirt, leading from the back of the lighthouse toward the cliff. 10, maybe 12 impressions. Then they stopped. Not turned back. Just ended. Like someone had walked to the edge and vanished. He considered calling the boat early, but with the fog that thick, they wouldn't be able to find the island even if they tried. So he went back inside, locked the doors, shoved an iron pipe through the stairwell handle, and tried to wait it out. The third night was the worst. Around 1:30 a.m., the beacon room door slammed shut with a bang so loud it shook dust from the rafters. Then came the knocking. Not on a door. Not on a window. On the wall. 3 slow knocks, like someone standing just inches behind the plaster, tapping from the other side. Ian didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared into the dark until it ended. When morning came, the box was gone. The closet door was wide open. That was enough. He radioed the Coast Guard and requested immediate extraction. Claimed it was a medical issue. They said they'd try to reach him within a few hours. He packed up and waited at the ledge. The fog didn't clear. In fact, it thickened. He sat there for nearly 7 hours, barely able to see 5 feet ahead. Then, just before sunset, he heard footsteps again, behind him this time. Gravel shifting. Slow. Deliberate. He turned and saw nothing. Or maybe just couldn't see anything through the fog. He stayed by the cliff's edge until he heard the boat horn. They pulled him out just after dark. The deckhand who helped him on board asked why he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Ian just told him the lighthouse wasn't safe. Said they should seal it off. He filed a basic report back on the mainland. Declared the structure compromised, unfit for entry. He didn't mention the box. Or the footsteps. Or the barefoot prints at the cliff. He told me later he wasn't sure if what he saw was real. Said isolation does strange things to your brain. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe not. That was the last lighthouse job Ian ever took. He phased out of field work that year and never looked back. When I asked him once, just once, if it was because of what happened on that island, he looked me square in the eye and said, "Some places are meant to be left alone. They just need time and silence." That's all he ever said about it again. I tried to look into the place myself years later. Tried searching the coordinates he'd scribbled in his notes. Nothing. No records. No name. County mentions a decommissioned tower off the coast, but no specifics. No access. No photos. Like it was erased. And maybe that's what gets me the most. Not what Ian told me, but how no one else ever seemed to say a thing. Like he was never there in the first place. Which lighthouse haunting chilled you the most? From shadowy footsteps to eerie whispers in the fog. These stories aren't just scary, they're unforgettable. Tell us in the comments, which lighthouse nightmare gripped you the hardest? Story 1, 2, or 3? We're watching the replies closely.